Good afternoon. We are delighted to welcome you to this webinar on how the workforce development system can support early childhood education registered apprenticeship programs, presented in collaboration with the Council for Professional Recognition and the Early Childhood Workforce Connector. Today's webinar is part of a series dedicated to highlighting registered apprenticeship programs in the field of early childhood education. This underscores our commitment to providing knowledge and resources for professional growth in this field. To turn on closed captions, click the three dots labeled as More in the bottom right corner and select Enable Live Transcript from the menu. All participants are muted upon entry. There will be an opportunity between sections, and at the end of the presentations for Q&A, you are welcome to unmute and ask your questions during these times. We also have team members monitoring the chat, so you can pop your questions in there throughout the presentation. The slide deck will be shared following this presentation, and a recording will be available on our CAN network. Let's dive in. Now, let's get to know our presenters. Those of you who attended the first webinar in this series will have heard from Marjorie before, but for those of you who may not be familiar yet, I'll share a little bit about her now. Marjorie Cohen, the project manager for the Early Childhood Workforce Connector, has over 20 years of experience in education and workforce development policy and research, technical assistance, program management, and project leadership. Marjorie supports early childhood education providers, in-demand sector employers, secondary and post-secondary education institutions, state and local agencies, and other key stakeholders to provide high-quality registered apprenticeship programs for the ECE workforce. Now I'd like you to meet our other presenter today, Robin Minton-Holmes, a seasoned professional with over 30 years of experience in nonprofit work. Hi, Robin. Previously, she worked at the local workforce board for 13 years, spearheading community-focused work with federal workforce dollars. Currently serving as a senior director for operations and grants administration at Midwest Urban Strategies, Robin has a proven track record of developing model programs and quality initiatives. Her expertise extends to strategic direction, crisis management, and human capital management, making her an asset in multi-site operations. As a subject matter on the ECWC team, Robin contributes her wealth of knowledge to the advancement of initiatives in early childhood education. Really quickly, I'll just go over the agenda for today. First, we'll be discussing our partnership with the Early Childhood Workforce Connector. Then we'll get into the details on what workforce development is, the role of early childhood education in the local workforce context, and we'll see examples from workforce development boards, then learn about how workforce development boards can support registered apprenticeship programs in early childhood before we close with some time for questions. Many of you here today may already be connected with the council and our work, but I'd like to share a little bit about what we do to make sure everyone is on the same page. We administer the Child Development Associate, or CDA credential, which is the most widely recognized credential in early childhood education. It is nationally recognized, transferable, and deeply based in the competencies critical to any early educator's success in the classroom. It is a key stepping stone on the path to career advancement in early childhood education. To be awarded the credential, candidates must complete an assessment process and demonstrate that they are able to put their knowledge of the CDA competency standards into practice in their daily work with children and families. Candidates can earn their credential in any of the settings that we offer: infant toddler, preschool, family childcare, home visiting, or military school age. Being awarded the CDA means a candidate is qualified to be a lead teacher in the classroom. The Council for Professional Recognition and the Early Childhood Workforce Connector have partnered to support credentialed career pathways for early childhood educators. Registered apprenticeship programs are an important investment in the early childhood workforce, providing high-quality professional learning and equitable compensation. This webinar series will explore how registered apprenticeships provide a professional development pathway to develop skills, advance and sustain successful careers, and strengthen the ECE workforce. The Council for Professional Recognition is a leader in credentialing early childhood educators worldwide. Together with the Early Childhood Workforce Connector, we are working toward advancing the careers of ECE professionals through the Child Development Associate, or the CDA, and U.S. Department of Labor credentialing. We will host these monthly webinar sessions leading up to the 2024 Early Educators Leadership Conference in Washington, D.C. in October. The Early Childhood Workforce Connector will be presenting alongside their partners to dive deeper into registered apprenticeship programs for ECE. And with that, I will hand it off to Marjorie.
Thank you so much, Haley. So we've got our first audience poll. Let's try that again. Did you come to our last webinar that was called Registered Apprenticeship in Early Childhood last month? So if we could launch that poll, Alicia, that would be really great. I'd love to find out if folks were there or not. There's no judgment either way, just like to know who's in the room. Okay. So I'm excited to see what happened. And if you can't remember, that's perfectly fine too. I do not remember what I did yesterday, frankly. All the days are just running together. So Alicia, whenever you're ready, do you want to show the results? Okay. So we got a good chunk of yes, a bigger chunk of no, and a few can't remember. Fair enough. So given that there are many folks who were not here last time, I'm going to do a quick sort of primer on what registered apprenticeship is and how it works with early childhood. So next. Okay. So before we get to that, let me tell you a little bit about who we are. We are the Early Childhood Workforce Connector, as Haley mentioned. And we are one of two recently funded early childhood education registered apprenticeship industry intermediaries, or just intermediaries. We, as the ECWC, the Early Childhood Workforce Connector, we promote developing, launching, and expanding registered apprenticeship programs to support and sustain a diverse, inclusive, well-qualified, and well-compensated early childhood education workforce. ECE-RA programs with high-quality, accessible, supportive, and equitable early childhood program employers lift the entire community and the local workforce. And we will hear a lot more about that from Robin in moments to come. So a strong, inclusive, and robust early childhood ecosystem contributes to the health and well-being of young children and their families, and as Robin's going to talk about, as well as the broader economy. As a U.S. Department of Labor-funded early childhood education intermediary, ECWC provides customized technical assistance and support, including help with curriculum development, outreach and recruitment, accessing available funding and mentor training, and a whole lot more. So what is registered apprenticeship? This is going to be sort of a quick overview. And then before we really get started, if you have some questions, we'd be happy to answer those. But basically, a registered apprenticeship is a structured U.S. Department of Labor approved training model with 5 key components. So the first is that apprenticeship is a job. It's a paid work where apprentices receive on-the-job professional learning. And so think about it, it's earn while you learn. It's not you go to school and then you go to work, it's all in one, which can help with really getting you up and ready much faster. So there's on-the-job learning. There's also related coursework on early childhood education. And that's a lot of what you're going to see in the CDA. There's a lot of that coursework there. Apprentices receive mentorship and coaching from experienced early childhood professionals. And finally, the program completers receive a U.S. Department of Labor nationally recognized credential. So all 5 of those components need to be in place in order for this to be a registered apprenticeship. Next. So registered apprenticeships require collaboration across sectors. This is a moment where these kinds of structured programs, no one agency or no one sector can do it alone. And so it's really important to understand that there are a bunch of partners that are really important who can help support you in your registered apprenticeship. And so the ECWC can help bring all of the necessary partners to the table and make sure that everyone's on the same page and aiming for the same goal. Which, as I mentioned before, is a diverse, inclusive, well-qualified, and well-compensated early childhood workforce. So before I move on and turn this over to Robin, I'm wondering if there are any clarifying questions that have come up in the chat, in the Q&A, or if anybody wants to unmute and ask some questions about registered apprenticeship. Kimberly, are there any in the Q&A?
We have one in the Q&A, and I think this might be for Alicia, but we're wondering if the transcript will be available with this recording on the CAN network.
So the last transcript was not available, but I think if there's a big enough demand, we can absolutely provide that.
All right, thank you. Marjorie, we
you.
don't have any questions on registered apprenticeship. Are there any that are popping up in the chat?
Tracy or Marion?
There is a question. Let's see where is the question. Are you going to explain how we can become an apprenticeship agency?
That is a great question. So on this slide, you'll see that there's apprenticeship agencies. That's actually thinking about that on the state and territory level. But if you're interested in launching your own registered apprenticeship, there are a couple things you can do. You can reach out to us and we'll have our contact information at the end. And that was all about what last month's webinar was about. And so I believe that recording is available on the CAN. But we are also happy to explain. What we're going to do today is really dig into this bottom partner, the public workforce system, and how early childhood educators and providers and leaders can really tap into the public workforce system as a partner that can support registered apprenticeships in early childhood. Thank you for those questions. I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Robin and let you know that one of the reasons that we have Robin here is the Midwest Urban Strategies, which she will explain in a moment where she's from, is a member of the Early Childhood Workforce Early Childhood Workforce Connector team. And we are very happy to have her and have her expertise as well as her teams on workforce development system and how to work with your local workforce boards. Robin?
Thank you, Marjorie. So we can go to the next slide. So Midwest Urban Strategies, as Marjorie said, I'm with Midwest Urban Strategies, and we serve as a subject matter expert in collaboration with the Early Childhood Workforce Connector. So I'm so pleased to be here today. MUS is what we call Midwest Urban Strategies. We're a nonprofit that's a consortium of workforce boards from across the Midwest. Our focus is to come together and to share best practices. However, we also share what's not working and how the workforce system needs to improve. Our mission as an organization is to help the local workforce boards and the local workforce ecosystems better serve marginalized communities. Over the past 5 years, MUS has brought more than $30 million to local communities. Our funding helps us pilot solutions which expand services, solve workforce problems, and helps us bring to scale best practices. In addition, we focus on system advocacy and combining various systems together. And so that's some of the things that we do here at Midwest Urban Strategies. So enough about us. Let's take a minute and do a poll. I don't know if that's Alicia or here we go. So we've just put a poll up there. How much do you know about workforce development boards? don't know much. I know a little bit. I know a good amount. Or I know a lot. So just let us know how much you know. There's no judgment here. This just helps me make sure I cover important points for you. Alicia, when you think we've got the results, go ahead and post them. All right, I don't know much. Most people don't know much. Some people know a little, and some people know a good amount, and a very small portion know a whole lot. So thanks for letting us know that. We'll go to the next slide. So let's just start based upon the different levels of knowledge that were posted in the poll. You know, let's stop and think about what is the workforce system and how does it work? It is a comprehensive, coordinated, and collaborative regional system of services and policies that address employer-demanded skills for now and in the future. Workforce development builds a pipeline of high-quality, skilled workers to address employer needs, to fill in-demand jobs, and contributes to the economic health and growth of the region. So this is all pretty high level, but the bottom line is, how does it work? Well, we're going to cover resources and funding more specifically in our April session of this series. But today we're going to briefly describe the kinds of resources the workforce system can bring to the childcare industry. For example, we can help with training dollars, supportive service, OJTs, which is on-the-job training, industry partnerships, sector strategies, engagement with other businesses, those kinds of things. So we want to work together. The workforce system works together to support and enhance the access to education, training, and job opportunities for individuals with a focus on those facing barriers to employment. In addition, one of the key services that are offered with the workforce system are services to employers. Without employers, we don't have jobs. Without jobs, we can't go to work. And then there wouldn't be a need for a workforce system. So employers are central to the work that we do, and they're central to the workforce system itself. Next slide. So what is the workforce system? Oh, wait a minute. Sorry. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is called WIOA. It's a federal law that was enacted in, can everybody mute, please? It was a federal law.
You just muted a little bit there, Robin.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm going to start that slide over. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act is a federal law that was enacted in 2014. It aims to strengthen and streamline the workforce system in the United States. WIOA focuses on improving access to employment, education, training, and support services for individuals, with a particular emphasis on helping those facing barriers to entering or rejoining the workforce. The law empowers each governor to set up a system for their state. One primary focus of WIOA is to bring together partners who are offering workforce services. So the law allocates dollars to the states to support the workforce system as a whole. The amount, this is really important, the amount varies by state. The implementation of WIOA also varies from state to state and even in each local community. As defined in WIOA, each state has a state plan which outlines how they're going to implement WIOA and what the priorities are for that state. The plan addresses workforce systems, workforce services, and the coordination of all this across multiple departments in the state that have workforce initiatives. So, for example, vocational rehabilitation has its own workforce program. Adult education has its own workforce program. Health and Human Services, work. I mean, it just depends. There's various departments in each state. But the goal is to create a unified plan for the state on how they plan to support employers and workers while aligning all the partners in the effort. In turn, the state plans inform what has to be covered in a local plan. Now, why am I talking about all these plans? The plans are super important because they describe the priorities of the state and the priorities of the local area. WIOA also outlines services that have to be offered by the local workforce boards to employers, services to workers, services to adults, and to youth. These services include education and skill building, career counseling, and support services. Support services are things like books, help with transportation, and other items that someone may need to help them with their education and their job search. WIOA can cover several aspects of the Registered Apprenticeship program, such as the skills education portion, the work-based learning portion, and even things that a participant may need to complete the Registered Apprenticeship. We're going to dive more into available funding, as we've said earlier in the April webinar. But overall, WIOA is about coordinating all of the services and systems that help the local areas actually bring up the workers in the area. So as I said, it varies. And that's one of the things you have to keep in mind is that the primary focus will be outlined in these plans. Next slide. So right now I'd like us to watch a brief video which explains workforce development and workforce boards.
What is a workforce development board? A workforce development board is a formal group of community leaders serving a city, a county, or a region that identifies the needs of the local job market, oversees one-stop career centers, and works to coordinate and align workforce development initiatives in their area. Workforce development boards with membership from business, local elected officials, labor, economic development, educators, and community leaders foster high-growth career opportunities to meet the needs of their regional economy. This system exists to help businesses find qualified workers to meet their present and future workforce needs and help workers acquire skills for employment opportunities. A workforce development board is the link between a region's workforce talent and its employer skill needs. They convene industry and their workforce and education partners in real time to impact the skilling and reskilling of America's workforce and put people back to work in career pathways that provide self-sufficiency. Together, this diverse group of leaders helps their community target recruitment opportunities, identify labor market trends, partner on economic development investments, and create resources to benefit all members of the community. Every workforce development board has a plan that establishes funding priorities for their area focused on a broad range of worker issues that consider wages, job mobility, access, and equity. By analyzing data and working with local businesses, workforce boards understand what skills are most in demand and foster the necessary training and credential programs for their region. Workforce boards also use outcome data to advise employers, policymakers, and communities about what approaches are successful. So without your local workforce development boards, local businesses, educational institutions, and other community stakeholders would not have a strong voice to represent the unique workforce needs of your community. So what is a workforce development board? It is a key link to your community's future.
Thank you. Next slide. So, this brings to question, like, what does the workforce board actually provide? How do they do all of this in their community? The workforce boards provide employment services. They help thousands of people every year find employment. They provide services to people to help them find employment, upgrade, or learn their new skills, career coaching, and they also provide supportive services or wraparound services to help somebody stay or complete their job search. Workforce boards help hundreds of employers find talented, skilled workers. They create a pipeline of workers by convening employers and the post-secondary education system and economic development into sector strategies. Next slide. So what's the role? And the video talked about this just a little bit, about the role of the local workforce development board. Each community has a workforce board. Sometimes these boards are county focused and some are city focused, while others are multi-area focused. As I mentioned earlier, in the plan, in the state plan, it actually describes how the areas are defined in each state. So in some states, it'll be multi-counties. In some states, it may be like they've taken the state and divided it in half. I mean, it just varies. So that's the reason you have to look at the plan to understand the actual area that the workforce board covers. Workforce boards serve as a convener in their defined area. They manage the local American job centers. They work with education providers. That includes the K through 12 systems and post-secondary systems, working to develop career pathways so that workers who are, in the beginning of their field, or currently employed can work up a career pathway. Workforce boards are charged by WIOA and the governor to bring together local partners in the workforce ecosystem. And this is a central point about the workforce board. This workforce ecosystem includes youth-serving organizations, veteran-focused providers, economic development partners, chambers of commerce, as well as city officials. One of the most important partners in the workforce ecosystem, as I've already said, are the employers. They bring the jobs. And so employment, skilled workers, and access to sustainable wages for all workers are the main focuses for the workforce ecosystem and thus the workforce board. Next. Okay, so we've covered a lot of pieces about the workforce system and the workforce board. Are there any clarifying questions in the chat that we need to cover?
Kimberly, are there any questions in the Q&A?
Let's see here. So looking at the Q&A questions, we don't have any that are specific to workforce board. So do you want me to save those for the Q&A portion, or do we want to tackle them now?
Let's save that for the Q&A portion.
Okay, wonderful.
Are
I
there-
don't have any in the Q&A.
Okay. Are there workforce development questions in the chat? Marian?
Not at this time.
Okay, great.
Great.
Then we can move ahead. It's all you, Robin.
Thank you so much. Next. So early childhood education is the foundation for a strong workforce and for a strong economy. We view early childhood education as an economic imperative. Limited access to childcare creates productivity problems. It causes employers to lose $12.7 billion annually due to childcare challenges faced by their workforce. This is going to be included on the next slide. The number of workers who are part-time because of inadequate access to childcare has increased every year since 2014. Next. Access across the 11 million parents, this annual burden for childcare is $37 billion. In aggregate, the burden on businesses is $13 billion. And in aggregate, this amounts to reduced tax revenues of $7 billion. Marjorie, you said something yesterday about that early child care workers are the workforce behind the workforce. Without them, the workforce doesn't happen. So that's one of the reasons I'm so pleased to be participating in the Early Childhood Workforce Connector, and that I'm so pleased to be here today, because without the workers to support the childcare initiatives, we wouldn't be able to go to work. So Marjorie, I'm going to pass to you.
Thank you, Robin. So this is just, you all know how important it is to invest in early childhood education, but we want to just talk a little bit about the kinds of information that folks not in early childhood need to keep in mind about how important early childhood is. And I just realized that I've been gesturing without turning on my camera. So, sorry about that. You all know this, but this is something that we like to talk to folks in the workforce development system, talk to other employers and industries about, because this is so crucial to why your work is the foundation of everything, right? And so children who have quality early experiences, they are better prepared to enter kindergarten, they do better in school, they are more likely to become well-adjusted adults. And for those employers that are in other industries, another piece that they don't often remember is that with quality early experience, children are then grow up to be grown-ups who are better prepared to enter the workforce and contribute to their communities. And so it's really important that this is a message that we and others can really help as you're thinking about maybe registered apprenticeship or about talking to partners that are outside of early childhood. Next slide. So this is where we sort of bring it all together, right? So registered apprenticeship is a strategy to increase access to quality early childhood education, right? So registered apprenticeship can help build up the workforce and create more qualified teachers, which then eventually becomes additional qualified teachers that leads to more classroom openings for children, right? So we want to get quality teachers in, and registered apprenticeship is that strategy. And once we have more quality teachers, we're able to open up more spots for more students and more children to get the quality early childhood experience that they need. And then the other side of that is that progressive wages in registered apprenticeship, because that is a major point of registered apprenticeship, is a progressive wage, leads to decrease in teacher turnover. This is a way to think about retention, right? So decreased turnover in teachers leads to a more stable workforce and environment, and children are able to learn and grow. And I think that's something that we're all really looking for right now is increasing access, getting more students and children into quality early childhood education settings. And in doing so, also creating a really soft, stable, and secure environment for teachers to feel like they can stay on and they can continue to do their work. And now we are going to do another clarifying and knowledge check. Are there questions in the Q&A about anything that we have discussed this far, Kimberly?
Yeah, we've got quite a few actually. Robin, these are for you. We're wondering if you can tell us about what those state plans look like for workforce boards and what an example of a sector strategy would be.
Sure, thanks for asking. An example that you would find in the state plan are the priorities of the state. So, for example, it's going to talk about how vocational rehabilitation referrals are going to happen over to the workforce, to the American Job Centers. It might talk about new economic development that has happened in a certain area, certain industry. And so therefore they're asking workforce boards to focus locally on developing a sector strategy. So for example, you might see that economic development is working on bringing perhaps IT hubs or data hubs to to a local area. And that then tells the workforce boards that we need to make sure we have people that are skilled up and ready to go to work in those data centers or data warehouse centers. In addition, it would call for schools to look at what kinds of education curriculum they need to be offering. It would say, honestly, when it comes to childcare, I think all economic development plans, this is, an MUS position, but we believe that economic development should include plans on childcare for the workers that are going to be working in the areas that they're doing economic development. And so a sector strategy is where you take an industry and you bring employers together from that industry, and you work on career pathways, credentialing, worker shortages, wages, those kinds of things as across multiple employers so that the industry actually gets raised up. Did that answer the question, you think, Kimberly?
Yeah, Robin, I think that was great.
Okay. Any
So
other?
we have another question from Helen, and Helen, I may need some clarification here, but she asked, as a potential registered apprenticeship host organization, we find it hard to reach WIB students. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, we're going to cover that a little bit later in the slides. Thanks for asking, because sometimes I know that there's not been great experiences in actually getting the connection with workforce boards, which is why I'm here today to really help educate you on how you can get involved with your workforce board and make inroads. And, also ECWC is here and willing to help make these connections around early childhood registered apprenticeships with your local workforce boards. And MUS will be we're a subject matter expert with them, so we would be at the side of ECWC. So you can always reach out to ECWC for additional support, and they'll bring in the subject matter expertise that you need to help make that connection.
Perfect. Thank you, Robin. Our next question is, how do we find our local workforce development board? But I think we're going to be covering that next.
Yep.
That is an excellent segue. We're just not quite there yet, but if you hold on, we will help you with that in just a moment. Kimberly, are there others?
That's all I have for now.
Right.
And now I'm just going to reach out to Marion and Tracy. Are there questions that for you to what about in the chat?
There aren't. No.
Okay, great. Thank you, Tracy.
Okay, so we thought it would be really important for you to be able to see this workforce board work in action. And so I brought with me today go to the next slide, please. I brought with me today two of my colleagues, and their organizations are also members of Midwest Urban Strategies. And we're going to dive right into a state example. In the Midwest, Missouri's proven to be a leader in taking steps to addressing childcare access challenges. Pilot initiatives for regional apprenticeships in early childhood education. They've also acted as group sponsors to expand access to childcare across Kansas City and also in St. Louis. So with me today are Shelley Penn and Nicole Dotson. Shelley Penn is the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer with the Full Employment Council in Kansas City, Missouri. They serve as the workforce board to two distinct areas. So unfortunately, I think Shelley has to write two local plans, but that's probably another story. So sorry about that, Shelley. That's a burden. So Shelley Penn began her career with FEC in 1992 as a job developer and has served as the Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of FEC for the past 20 years. Mrs. Penn provides direct oversight of all operational staff, including supervising the delivery of all training and employment activities undertaken by the Workforce Board and the agency on behalf of its clients and employers. We also have Nicole Dotson. Nicole is my colleague from St. Louis, Missouri. She is with the Northside Economic Empowerment Center, and she's a manager for St. Louis Development Corp. She is a St. Louis City native and has compassion for economic growth, education, and community building. With more than 20 years of experience in finance, workforce development, management, and facilitating training workshops, she has worked with diverse groups of individuals in reentry, community development, nonprofit, and corporate sectors. We're going to start with Shelley, who's going to give us some information about what Kansas City has done in Missouri. So I turn it over to you, Shelley.
Hello, again, my name is Shelley Penn, and I'm with the Full Employment Council. The Full Employment Council is the managing entity for 2 workforce boards, as Robin mentioned, in Kansas City. We serve rural areas, urban and suburban, and we're also the fiscal agent, which is a little rare. Out of the 625 workforce boards, we're one of about 15 that actually provide direct services. So we do the work, needless to say. But back in 2016, we became an intermediary for the Department of Labor's Registered Apprenticeships. And back then we created the first CNA healthcare registered apprenticeship. Robin mentioned sector strategies, and part of our planning in workforce boards is to look at locally where the growing jobs are, where growth opportunities. We look at wages, we look at retention. We take all of those things in consideration when we identify our sector strategies. And so child care development actually was not on our radar at the time. But to give you a little backdrop, during the pandemic, during the days of the Great Resignation, we held, when things were closed, these drive-through hiring events. And we had several employers come on site. Ford Motor Company would be one that you're familiar with, along with hospitals and other manufacturers. And we had 100 or more people show up in their cars with their children. And we took surveys. And, you know, everyone said we couldn't find people and that people didn't want to work. And we wanted to show that that wasn't true, that people did want to work and that for the right job, they would come out. But we also surveyed what did the client, in our mind, the client is both the employer and the job seeker. What do they want and what would get them out of their house to go to work? So one was the right job for good pay. The other was flexible schedules. The other thing was the opportunity to grow. And then the final survey question was, what do you need to continue and to stay on the job? And it was childcare assistance. They talked about availability, accessibility, and affordability. And we tagged that as the AAAs, the AAA effect. And so we decided to, hey, this is an opportunity for us to maybe pursue something in childcare. I'm gonna go back a little bit, back to my days as a job developer. Robin mentioned that I had been here 30 years. Well, back in the early days, childcare occupations was something that the workforce board did not touch, to be honest with you, because of the turnover and in some instance low pay and then few growth opportunities. What Robin, I don't know if she mentioned, but our system has performance standards. And so we have to place people at a minimum wage. Here in Kansas City, the local rate is about $15 an hour. Once we place you in a job, you have to be there at least 1 year later in order for us to get a positive check. And so we thought this would be a great opportunity to grow our own childcare development apprenticeship program. And we thought, what better way to get this thing started than to meet and with our industry partners, Deidre Anderson, who was with the Early Start program, and Deidre Mann with Emmanuel Family and Child Development Center, to tell us what are the training standards, to take their pulse on would the child care providers be willing to increase those wages? Could we convince them to raise the starting wage to $15 an hour? And so you can imagine that was a heavy tug there. But after countless hours of meeting with employers to get their buy-in, because that's the first thing, that's the first start. We have to get with employers, we have to get their buy-in, we have to get their commitment. And then the next step was to meet with our local community college. Robin mentioned we were conveners. Again, we have to meet with employers, we have to meet with industry experts, and then our education providers to see if this was something that we could put together. And so we adopted their early childhood associate degree model and created this apprenticeship program. Together, it became a 337-hour classroom training program that also included 2,080 hours of on-the-job learning activity. We created 2 separate pathways because we knew that not every child care provider could hire new people. And so we encouraged them to look at their incumbent workers or their existing staff to see if there was someone on their team that they would look at to see, if this is someone that I would like to promote, maybe to a supervisor. And the thing about an apprenticeship is that you meet people where they are. You can promote, especially if you have a pathway that takes them to different levels. You can start someone that is existing and take them this way, and someone that is new and take them that way. And so that 2-path program was very attractive to our employers. The other thing that we did was we looked at, okay, how do we create wage increases? Because if you understand apprenticeships, you have to have scheduled wage increase. Wage increases that would not break the bank of the child care providers, but would satisfy the requirements under the Department of Labor registered apprenticeships. And so we looked at 50 cents increases that, I think it's $1.50 that will take them from $15 an hour to start. And at the end of the apprenticeship program, they would end at $16.50. We also thought about retention, because going back to the early years, the turnover was a problem. So how do we keep people still? How do we get them to stay where they are, learn the skills that are required of the job, to develop those necessary skills to progress? We thought about these benchmarks that would provide every 6 weeks or so, sometimes longer, incentive pays, and those were attractive. We also thought about the employer. What type of incentives could we provide the employers? And that included a $3,200 payment to the employers to offset their initial cost to onboard each candidate. And that could be used for supplies to cover program costs, etc. So today, our program has seen over 135 apprentices since April of 2023. I think our key performance standards when we evaluate everything will be to see how many will complete one, and then being able to sustain the program in the long run. I think the workforce board's role again has been to convene the players, the provider, the education folks, and then bring the people. The one thing Robin mentioned, people say, well, where are we? If you look for your local career centers, those are usually your workforce boards. As far as people, usually your workforce boards have the people. We see about 40,000 people annually. Most workforce boards are the place where people apply for their UI insurance. And so we're never at a, there's always people coming through our system. And I'll tell you, we have a waiting list for people trying to get into this child care apprenticeship program. And we're excited. We've been our partners in St. Louis. We huddle almost monthly to share best practices. And so far it's been a winner.
Thank you, Shelley.
Okay.
Thank you so much, Shelley. I love the work that you guys are doing there in Kansas City. You really are a leader for this. And I'm pleased that we'll be able to share with the group today. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Nicole Dotson. Hi, Nicole.
Hello,
Ready?
everyone. Hi. Thank you
Okay.
so much for having me, Robin. And so my name is Nicole Dotson, and I work for St. Louis Development Corporation. And we serve as an economic development arm for the city of St. Louis. I have the phenomenal opportunity in the absence of my director, Ms. Stacy Fowler, to speak on behalf of St. Louis Development Corporation, as well as SLATE, which is St. Louis Agency on Training and Employment, Missouri Job Center. I actually have the best of both worlds because I actually served as a program manager for SLATE, as well as now currently working for St. Louis Development Corporation. So we've been granted this wonderful opportunity to partner with MUS, FEC, SLATE, and other workforce boards in Region 5 to target populations who are stricken with poverty, unemployment, who are also unemployed, and provide them with the training and the resources that they need to thrive. A unique fun fact is we are excited that we are actually being St. Louis Development Corporation being we're economic development. So we get the opportunity for the first time to be paired with workforce. And that's a fun fact, and it's very unique because that has not happened in St. Louis. So let's dive in. When we explore early childhood, we immediately direct our focus on bridging the wealth gap. We immediately think about barriers. We immediately, again, think about individuals who are unemployed and who are underemployed, and why that is. The question that comes to our mind is, what can we do to ensure that we can develop and invest in having a thriving childcare ecosystem that create professionals? You heard Shelley Penn just talk about how we look at livable wages, and that's one of the things that we worked in overdrive when we look close at how do we bridge the gap, the wealth gap. We think about how can we ensure that we get our professionals who are interested in early childhood the opportunity to really feel empowered to work in this industry sector. So it's important that we think about things such as we have to address the crippling labor shortage in this industry sector first, which the way that we do that is we leverage funding and resources in order to provide training and education to our childcare workers that are interested in this. Once we do this, then now we have the opportunity, we have the opportunity to now develop, transform, and empower our professionals to rejoin our workforce, but feel confident in doing so. When we think about this process, one of the things that we have witnessed is that people weren't feeling very secure in this because, as you hear, our professionals were entering into this field and being encouraged to do apprenticeships. But in doing that, what we found was here in St. Louis at the time, they were making only $9 an hour. So what we experienced was individuals going through our programs, being placed because we were working with a dynamic training provider at the time, but they would receive their CDA credential after doing their classroom hours, but then they will leave and they would go try to find a organization that they could work for, trying to make a higher dollar. Well, with this partnership that we have with our Workforce Development Board, along with Slate, FEC, MUS, our goal is to take a closer look at what can we do different? How can we ensure that we provide sustainability and success to our child care providers? Our goal is to see them be placed in a place with this opportunity to start this potential journey, workforce journey, but become entrepreneurs or become directors of childcare or become managers of childcare. But in order for us to do that, it's important that we realize and take a closer look at what can we do to sustain them and also retain them while doing that. I am super excited to see us continue to partner with the Urban League, the YMCA, who has models of their own with childcare, to see when we open up our Workforce Innovation Hub, how we can have them come together and open up a 24-hour childcare system that will give individuals the opportunity that are interested in early childhood, manufacturing, IT, and all those other industry sectors across our region, the opportunity in St. Louis to be able to really have this training without the burden of wondering, can I afford childcare? Or once I'm done with this, will I make a livable wage that will allow me the opportunity to be able to even afford childcare? Or just that amazing feeling of knowing that I have went through this training. I've obtained my CDA credential, and now I'm on my way to become DOL certified, where I can take my credential from being certified through the Department of Labor. And not only am I making a livable wage, but I can go to any state and use this credential however I need to in this field, be it that it is being a director, be it that I will become that, trainer, or opening up or partnering with our workforce boards to become an intermediary to ensure that I can help other child care professionals that are looking to either stay in this field, start this field, or remain successful in this field, look at other avenues on how they can continue to upgrade and integrate their opportunity. So we look forward to continuing to work with everyone to see how we are able to do that.
Thank you, Nicole.
Thank
I'm
you.
so impressed with how you're incorporating your childcare sites into facilities that are coming in. I think it's a real model for the nation and how economic development is coming together with the workforce board to to make sure that there's a workforce to support the workforce. So
Absolutely.
thanks for
And
sharing.
thank you. We believe in sustainability. Thank you.
Yeah. So at this time, we have another little poll. And what we want to know, you can go to, is how well do you know your own local workforce? And do you know them? So this is a non-judgment questionnaire once again, because we're going to talk about how to get to know them better. If you just take a minute and fill that out, we'd be grateful. Do we have any results? Here we go. Look at this. Most of you do not know and do not know who your workforce board is. A few of you know a little bit, and I'm so pleased to see that 15% of you have a great partnership. That's good. So we're going to
Robin?
talk now. Yes.
Before we move on, because I know that this is like the nitty gritty and how do you actually reach out to your workforce development board and all of that, I do want to take us a moment to see if there are any questions for Nicole and Shelley specifically. Kimberly, do we have any questions for our speakers?
See here. Not for our speakers at this time.
Okay, thank you. Tracy and Marion, do we have any questions for our speakers?
Yes, I think this one was directed toward, popped up when Nicole was speaking. Someone said, if you build it, they will come. Public or private facilities, are they in for-profit, nonprofit, or municipal locations or inside companies? In regard to your, you're talking about the development, Nicole.
Of
Thank
our
you.
Workforce Innovation Center, absolutely. So with our Workforce Innovation Center, it would encompass both nonprofit, for-profit industries that has that interest. I want to make sure, because I believe that was can you give me the other part of the question? I want to just make sure I'm answering it properly. Tracy?
Yes, they were, yes, here I am. Sorry, I had to unmute myself,
okay.
Nicole.
Okay.
Public or private facilities, whoops, it just moved on me. Public or private facilities, are they in for-profit, nonprofit, municipal locations, or inside the companies?
Right. So it would be we as SLDC would be the person with the Workforce Innovation Center. The great thing about that is that it would be some public, some will be private, some will be nonprofit, some will be for-profit that are looking to potentially partner with us in this process.
Great,
Thank you so much.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else, Tracy?
One last question came up, wondering what were the turnover issues and how have they been remediated?
Is that for me and Shelley or just for me?
I think for either of you, whoever would want to take it, or if you have different perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Shelley and I
how
could
has
answer
registered
together.
apprenticeship really helped to remediate sort of that turnover issue?
Yeah, absolutely. So Shelley, did you want to answer it first and then I can come behind you and answer the question?
Yes, I believe the higher starting wage. We see and we know that most people will job hop for, a higher paid job, despite being very vested in a certain career. And so with a higher starting wage, and then scheduled increases, it eliminates the gray. You don't have to guess about when you're going to get a raise. Having those built-in incentives of $250 or a total of $1,250 that you're going to get over a 6-month period helps. Having that supportive services payment, I didn't mention that, for rent, for transportation, and also for childcare assistance. I think we try to eliminate any barrier that they may have to staying on the job. And that was one thing that in our planning that we looked at. And so I think that helped. In the early days, the wages were, and I'm talking about when I started, they were below what the Workforce Board and the Department of Labor would allow us to engage. And so with this switch and this change, we're able to engage childcare, and there's potential. And then we're seeing a lot of young people come in and talk about ownership, and I think that's huge.
Right.
Absolutely. So, just to mirror what Shelley said, one of the things that we saw was simply the fact that 925 just simply wasn't enough. Although you had the opportunity to earn while you learned during this process, and you looked at the bigger picture of even being able to leave, having your CDA credential, as well as obtaining the opportunity to have your DOL certification, 925 just simply wasn't enough for a mother who was potentially prior receiving benefits such as SNAP or some sort of temporary assistance that didn't allow them to be able to feed their children. Because what we know is that some of the people that entered into these programs, when we look at the target areas that we're targeting to break the cycle of poverty for those poverty-stricken areas, most of them are receiving some sort of benefits such as food stamps or just SNAP. And once they enter into this training, unfortunately, those benefits are immediately cut. And so when we think about that being cut, and then now I'm making 925, and although I'm earning while I'm learning, they're also taking taxes. So I'm really not bringing home enough to continue to feed my kids or even survive. And so the goal was, when they received their CDA, unfortunately, they were leaving to try to see, now that I at least got one of the credentials, I can move forward to something different. It's still in the childcare industry. So when we look at just hopefully being able to address getting that increase, Shelley talked about $15 an hour. We're looking at even trying to see if we can do anywhere from $15 to $18 an hour to ensure that it's something that make a person feel like this is worth doing, especially if I've never made that amount before.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Cool. Thanks, guys.
I think we had one hand up at some point. Deidre, are you out there? Did you have a question?
It's
Feel free
actually
to-
a comment. I'm one of the partners with the Full Employment Council. I apologize. I can't take myself off camera because I'm trying to drive back from the Capitol, doing some advocacy around this issue. But our apprentices are in cohorts, and so beyond all of the wonderful incentives that we're able to provide for participants and the connections with generalized workforce, there's an adjunct instructor that's working with them, and so they're learning from and with their peers and a content area expert. And for any of the other early childhood people out there, the key is for you to have program leadership that supports the people getting their credentials and giving them that release time, or paying them to come in on Saturdays or weekends or whatever. And those are things that the local workforce has been able to help us with. And it goes so much further than even just the wages piece, the ways that their confidence is built.
Thank you so much. That was
Thank you.
that was helpful content.
I have a
And
statement.
Mhm.
This is Deborah, man. I'm also one of the partners. I've been sitting here trying to figure out how to get off mute and get on the camera. But, just looking at some of the questions, and hi, Robin. I enjoyed
Hi.
myself in Washington at the round table up there.
Yeah.
One of the things that I'm finding and what we're doing with our program, because we are one of the ones here in Kansas City, is you have to build in also those wraparound services that go along with,
Right.
the CDA. You just can't offer the CDA. You have to think about professionalism training, social and emotional wellness, and the ability to help teachers with just real life issues. The incentives are great, and we are using those. But a lot of the teachers that are participants that are coming through the door are really struggling with real life issues. And so, looking as you begin to put together your program, and you want an apprenticeship program, or or early childhood workforce development program, you got to look at supportive services, and that has really been the success of our program. Our staff working on their CDA, but the wraparound support, they also get pulled out of class for, social and emotional regulation, professionalism. How do you show up for work? Bringing those things to their mind in the front for and helping them think about those really builds a strong program.
That's great. Thank you so much for that add-in, Deborah. It was exactly what we needed. And it actually moves us to the next slide. So thank you. Actually, we can go to the next one. So as Deborah mentioned, workforce development, and as Shelley and Nicole and Deidre all said, workforce development boards serve thousands of customers every year with the outcome of assisting people find employment. They help finding employment may require skills upgrading, career coaching, or wraparound services, and we assist hundreds of employers with finding or promoting up skilled, talented workers. We create a pipeline of workers by convening employers in the post-secondary education system into sector strategies. Next slide, please. So, I think that the comments that were just shared really highlighted the power of connecting with a workforce development program, a workforce development board for a registered apprenticeship program. The apprentices need support. They're going to have life needs that happen. They're going to need career connections and coachings. They're going to need assistance with with reasonable accommodation requests. And they also may need help paying for the training. The employer is going to need help with on-the-job training. We can offer that. And we can offer wage reimbursements. Now, that's a tricky thing that I just want to say. You have to talk to each workforce development board, because what they can offer is during the work-based learning portion of the registered apprenticeship program, they can support a portion of the wage is reimbursed back to the employer. And we're going to talk more about that in April when we come back together in our next webinar. But I think it's important to understand that the wage reimbursement is really to help offset the burden that the employer has of having a worker that's not at 100% yet. They also can help with recruitment and pre-hire services, tax incentives, and other types of funding resources like bonds and all kinds of things. What I want you to understand is that for workforce development boards, these are not a must do, but they are a can do. So it all goes back to what are their priorities that they're working on. Some workforce development boards have very limited dollars, and they may not be able to support financially a regional apprenticeship program. However, they will be able to help in other ways and as being advocates. Now, I think we've talked about training dollars, supportive service dollars. Supportive service dollars, I want you to think of supportive services as wraparound, or the things that life happens that make people not be able to continue in their career path. They can help with industry partners, sector strategies, and engagement with other businesses. Next slide. So how do you collaborate with your local workforce board? There's lots of different ways, and we want you to really think about this as intentional collaboration. After all, why would you want to connect with your local workforce board? What's important there is that you can share information about business needs. It's about aligning the local goals that are happening across other employers like yourself or across other workers, across education systems. It's coordinating service delivery, leveraging resources, creating a common vision, but most importantly, it's about creating trust. Next slide. So what can you do to connect with your local workforce board? You know, I say, give your local workforce board executive director a phone call. He or she's going to really appreciate that I just said that. You can call as a single early childhood education provider, or you can join and have other providers come with you. If you have a education partner, have them come with you and actually sit and meet and talk in order to develop intentional collaboration. So call and talk with the local executive director of the workforce board. Now, what I'm not saying is just walk into your American Job Center and talk to somebody. I'm not saying that. I'm specifically saying contact the local workforce board. When you go into the American Job Center, that's where service delivery is happening. But when you can go into the workforce board, you're actually entering at a higher level than where the service is happening. And you're actually going to get incorporated into visions that are happening, initiatives that are happening, and you're going to have more thrust to the importance of starting that registered apprenticeship program with the workforce board. You can call ECWC or email ECWC. I know I've seen Kimberly putting in the chat how to get in touch with us. You can ask MUS. We're happy to join the meetings with you when you're meeting with the workforce board. Sometimes we can bring a different sort of ear to the conversation because we hear things a little differently because we're in the business. Participate in hiring fairs. That's an easy way to get into the system of what's happening with your local workforce board. Go with other in childcare employers, like I just talked about. The workforce board will have committees. You can get involved in their committees. You can even maybe, if you meet with your executive director, there may be a spot on the board for you. Who knows? It just all depends on what's happening in that local area. Another important point that we really haven't talked much about today is the career and technical education providers in your area. The workforce boards are typically very involved with career and tech ed programs because that's a part of that K through 12 system, and they're trying to create those pathways all the way up for workers. And you can invite workforce board staff and the community college representative to come and visit you at your child care center so you can talk about what's happening. So those are ways to connect with your local workforce board. Next slide, please. And one of the things you guys have been asking is, how do I figure out who my local workforce board is? There's lots of different names for workforce boards. Some are called Career Source. I think that's in Florida. Michigan Works. They're all different kinds of names. But in order to find your local workforce board, we've posted here a website you can go to. You select your state, and then from there you can select your local area, and you can find out the contact information for your local workforce board. So that's what I have for today. Marjorie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Robin and Shelley and Nicole. I think this has been an incredibly informative webinar. And I do want to say, for those of you, I've been peeking at the chat. For those of you who are interested in understanding more about registered apprenticeship, sort of overall, please go to the CAN website and check out our first webinar in this series. Also, I will continue to tell everybody that you can reach out to us at info@ecwconnector.org. I believe several of my colleagues have been putting that in there. We are funded by the Department of Labor to provide all the kinds of supports that you need to think about, to develop, to get your program registered, to implement it. And that is all funded through the Department of Labor. And so it's at no cost to any of you. We can also help you think about some of the funding options. In fact, the funding options, we have a two-part webinar coming up in the next 2 months, in April and May, specifically about using braiding, blending, accessing funding for early childhood registered apprenticeships. So with that, I do want to find out if there are any final questions that you all might want. Kimberly, are there any questions that you think the group should hear?
Yeah, first we are getting some requests. If we could go back just one slide, they wanted to catch that web link before we move on. But a question I wanted to address for the whole group is from Melissa, and she sent it at the beginning of our webinar. But we want to talk more about, where does apprenticeship fall in the ECE education pathway, and how does it align with the CDA?
That is an excellent question. I have a couple answers for that. One, we actually talked about that in our last webinar, and I strongly suggest you go back and look at that. But the CDA can be very easily integrated into a registered apprenticeship program. Registered apprenticeship programs are not just for entry. They can also be for upskilling, or, you know, going up the career ladder. So I do want you to know that the CDA is a great place to start, and a registered apprenticeship can be for the CDA. That can be part of your the credentialing that you get at the end of the registered apprenticeship. You can also do a registered apprenticeship that gets you an AA, or an associate's degree, or a bachelor's degree. There are a number of programs across the country that help folks who are already in early childhood, who want to upgrade their skills, who want to think about, maybe they're a teaching assistant and they want to become a lead teacher. So I do want you to know that there are multiple levels of registered apprenticeship within this career pathway, and that the CDA is one of those really solid, easy, I don't mean easy. Registered apprenticeship programs aren't easy, but there's an enormous amount of overlap between the CDA and the standards for registered apprenticeship. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions.
Perfect. I have one more from the Q&A that I'd like to highlight. This one was from Amy, and she would like to know, how do you advise a national organization that is interested in potentially registering an apprenticeship program?
So my first answer is, come talk to us. That is what we do. We are funded by the Department of Labor to walk you through every single step of a registered program. We can support you in every step. We can help you think about developing. We can think about launching. We can help you get your program registered. It's sort of a process, because it's a government process, therefore it's an onerous process, but we are here to make this as less burdensome, I don't know what the word is, but to take that burden off of you. So I hope that's helpful. But again, info at ECWConnector.org. It's in the chat. It will be part of the materials that come after this. And for everybody who is asking, yes, there will be a transcript. Probably there will be a transcript if you're asking for it. There will be, this is recorded, and you will be able to access the slide deck. So you'll be able to click on that link from Robin's slide. Info at ECWConnector.org. I just happened to see in the chat that somebody asked me for that again. I think we have time for one more quick question. Tracy or Marion, is there a quick question we can answer?
I
Do
think,
see.
go ahead,
Tracy.
Marianne. Nope, go ahead, Marianne. Take it away.
I do see a question from Darian, and I think he wanted to know, does supportive services pay for mental health apprenticeship within a mental health apprenticeship curriculum?
I think that
If
is
I'm
possible.
saying.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's possible. You know, it's all, I would say, go talk to your local workforce board and see what their priorities are, but it is possible. Remember, these are all possibilities, but it all depends on how much money the workforce board has to put towards this initiative. We're urging them, all of our members, to make this a priority. So, you know, if you run into any barriers, please reach out to ECWC, and we'd be happy to see what we can do to help you.
Thank you. Great. We understand that there are a bunch of questions that had not been answered, but we are at the end, just about at the end of our time. Please feel free to put your questions in the chat. We will try to provide answers in the coming weeks. Haley, it's all you.
All right.
Can I ask you a quick question?
Oh. So I just want to highlight for everyone that this series is culminating in a live session at the 2024 Early Educators Leadership Conference, and I welcome you all to register. Registration is currently live on the council website. And the next session in this series will be investing in early childhood education careers, navigating funding for registered apprenticeship. So as Marjorie has mentioned throughout this webinar, this will be the first of a two-part series, first of two parts of this series that focus on funding in apprenticeships for early childhood. And you can access the recording after this webinar on the Council Alumni Network. Anyone at all can join the CAN, and I welcome you to do so. And as well, here is how you can connect with us. You can email us, you can check out our website, check out our social media, sign up for our newsletters, and we will also be sending you the slide deck and recording after we are all finished up today. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you to our fabulous presenters for a wonderful job.
I want to ask a quick question before you hang up. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Are we getting a PAU for this webinar?
Haley, do you want to? I don't think you're getting any continuing ed credit.
No.
None. So no PAUs, no nothing. So for the credentialing.
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Will that one in October? Will we get any continuous training for the one in October?
I'm sorry. For EELC,
Yes.
you have to register for the conference in order to attend. And then that is handled by another department.
Okay. Thank you.
So I can actually answer that very quickly. For any sessions that are attended at ELC, if you do register and attend, you can receive some credit for that afterwards once you've completed like an exit survey. But yes, you would
Okay.
have to register and be in person to receive that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you everyone so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session.